Hey, friends. Welcome to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas, and we're so glad you've joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in. Folks, we have not one, but two dear friends and folks we love and trust their voice who are with us today.
Jill Phillips Gullahorn is one of our favorite therapists in Nashville. Wise, grounded, and deeply gifted at helping people grow with honesty and compassion. Besides being a therapist, she's an Enneagram expert and teacher. And besides that, she has spent more than 2 decades as a celebrated singer-songwriter known for her soulful storytelling. And she brings that same depth and insight into this conversation today. Jill is also a wife, a mom, and a dear friend of the two of us, and we are so grateful to have her with us for this conversation.
Our friend Hunter Mobley is a lawyer, writer, and Enneagram teacher who has spent years helping individuals, families, and communities understand themselves with greater compassion. Formerly the executive pastor of Christ Church in Nashville, and now a leading voice in Enneagram wisdom, Hunter guides people toward emotional and spiritual growth through practical, grace-filled insights. His newest book, Letting Go, Finding You, invites us into the freedom that comes from releasing what no longer serves us. We're so grateful to welcome Hunter Mobley to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast.
Y'all, we have been talking about this for months, getting to sit down with you two and talk about the Enneagram. I mean, you have been one of my favorite teachers on it for a long time, and you have recently become one.
Thank you.
Because I'm more familiar with you. But yes, just so excited. And we just love and respect you both as human beings so much.
I was thinking that,
so
like, not
excited
just
to
two of
learn
our
from
favorite
you.
teachers, two of our favorite humans,
Amen.
too.
Well,
You all.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
It's really fun to be here too. I mean, I've been so excited about this, and Jill and I's Enneagram journey really began together. Do y'all know that?
Really? No.
We really came to the Enneagram sort of in some common places and through common teachers and common times.
Yes, we sure did.
And we walked through an apprentice class with Suzanne Stabile for 3 years together.
Wow.
Did we learn about it in Boca Grande, Florida together for the first? You knew it probably
Yes.
already, or did you?
Yes, but not in the
Not
deep
in the deep
way
way.
with which she teaches it.
Yeah.
So I think our journey was almost exactly
We've got
the
these
same.
parallel tracks.
Wow.
Yes.
And the
That's
very
so
first
cool.
time I ever taught a Know Your Number, we taught it together.
That's right.
That was my very first Know Your Number teaching. So it's really fun to be sitting on the
Wow.
couch with
That's so
Jill
fun.
doing this
Oh,
work.
that's so fun.
You know, it's work that is about relationships, and so it's fun to do it in relationships.
Well said.
That is
Great
a
way to
great
say it.
point. Yes. Well, let's jump in. So, thinking about this being a parenting podcast, and obviously we all love the Enneagram so much, but how, just from an overview standpoint, would you say it can help parents show up with more grace and less reactivity?
Mm.
Well, you want to start with that, or?
I would say that one of the beautiful things about the Enneagram as a parenting gift is
That's a great way
it
to
starts out with just reminding us as caregivers, as parents, as humans, that there are different ways that we show up in the world. I always say if the only thing that people do with the Enneagram, if they never learn specifically about the 9 numbers, if they kind of hear it and forget about it, and don't become what we might call kind of deep students of the Enneagram, if they just almost came to a Know Your Number seminar and listened to the 9 different types described, at a base level, it has the potential to build compassion for us just to know, whoa, there are 9 different ways of responding and processing and seeing. So I think as people who do life with other people, as parents, as caregivers, as friends, as family, just starting from a place of, whoa, I've got a tool to remind myself that my way of responding and seeing is not the only way.
Yes.
If we can just start there, we are ahead of a lot of the world.
Yes. Especially today. It feels
especially
like we need that
today.
more than ever.
That's right. If we
Especially
could start an
today.
in there, we'd be ahead of
Especially
that.
today. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then, of course, we can go as deep as we can to know once we start to get a sense of, well, now there's 9 ways. Let me learn more about my way and the ways in which that kind of helps relationships and can harm some of my relationships. That's the next place to go, because people always want to start, I think, down the road of, well, what number might my child be or this other person be? And how can I It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now let's start with just understanding your way of seeing and responding. That's the first place. The Enneagram, at the end of the day, we can't control anybody else. And we can barely control ourselves. We really can't control ourselves, but maybe we can do some work on ourselves to just have better self-understanding and knowing. And I just think the very first piece of the Enneagram is knowing that there are 9 different ways of seeing and responding. Then knowing a few things that are healthy and maybe unhelpful about your way of seeing and responding. And then the work just goes from there. But that's the starting place to me.
Man, I don't have hardly anything to add to that because I could not agree more. That is so good. And the only slight thing I would add from my story is it is a path of humility as well for self, recognizing your limitations. You know, that's kind of like what Hunter was talking about, like knowing your limitations, knowing your struggles, and just doing that work. And I think also the temptation that I have felt as a parent, I would imagine some of your parents listening have felt this, is the temptation to control and manage.
Yes.
And the Enneagram used as a controlling method, just chuck it right now.
Exactly.
You know, it's not to reduce people and know them and name them and control them and manage them.
Right.
It's to open your eyes. It's to stay compassionate and curious. And I think even specifically to not really focus as much on your kids' behavior, but sort of the motivation behind. You know, we can sort of get fixated on their behavior and why they're doing that. And I can think of a story later with that with my son. But if you understand the why and sort of the motivation that that's coming from, we can really do some deeper work with our kids and connecting work. So I think it's really good for that.
Absolutely. Well said.
Thank you.
You too. We're only 5 minutes in, and then everyone knows exactly why we invited the two of you to come be with us.
Yes.
So excited about this conversation. So let's build on that. You know, the hope would be for any of us in parenting that our kids would see us growing as we're inviting them to grow as well. So how would you say the Enneagram helps us model healthy self-awareness and transformation for the kids we love?
How does it model healthy? I mean, I think Hunter and I, again, like he said, came from the same school. So we don't believe the Enneagram is everything. And Suzanne Stabile teaches this. The Enneagram is connected to so many different things. What does she always say? It doesn't do anything on its own.
Exactly.
So
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
Absolutely.
And so I think, you know, what I think the Enneagram can do, along with spiritual transformation and, you know, understanding your kids in the context of their story, understanding your family of origin story, all of these different things. I think what it can do is you can sort of recognize your giftings and your unique struggles. And you might understand, for me, why I'm bringing some of my sort of love for common good as a 6, and also some of my fear and anxiety and struggles with control, why I might be bringing that into my story with my kids. And that keeps me humble. It keeps me from thinking, oh, I always know what's right for them. It keeps me, again, compassionate and curious. So I think what does Dan Siegel always talk about, you know, rupture and repair being such an important thing to model for kids. I've always heard the Enneagram can be a really particular path of repentance as well, because we know our shadow sides. We know the things that we struggle with, and then we can bring that to our kids.
Absolutely.
You know, my kids joke. They have this thing that they would say when they were getting older. They would go, "Mom's getting clampy." And we would laugh so hard about it. We could laugh.
And everybody in the house knew what that meant. It was a common language.
Clampy.
Yeah.
And when we can keep our gifts and also our struggles all before us, we can laugh about something like that instead of take that so personally. And I could come and be like, yeah, I'm totally getting clampy. And I would say, you know what? I did not care what your room looked like yesterday. And I did really like severely today. I think that's coming out of something that happened in my day. And so I'm really sorry.
Good.
I'm totally getting clampy. But everybody kind of knew their stuff because we had used Enneagram language. So we weren't picking on any one person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's just an example.
You know, it's funny. I almost think that it doesn't matter what the language is. If we have it in common, it's got the possibility to transform our relationship. So the Enneagram, to me, like you said, Jill, it's a tool. It's the one that I know about, so it's the one that I talk about. But it's not the only tool in the toolbox. And if it resonates with people, great. If it doesn't, go discover some other tools. But when we have something in common, now we do have a way to sort of turn down the frustration that we have with each other when we just can't talk about things that are real and hard. And David, one thing that I loved in your question that I was thinking of is that idea of being curious. One of the challenges with all of us is whenever we work on ourselves, and of course, I don't even like those words because work on ourselves sounds like we're really going to change ourselves. But whenever we sort of do things to develop self-awareness and self-development and soul growth and relationship growth, a lot of times the people around us start to say, what's wrong with you? When is the old you coming? You used to be so fun. We used to always be able to count on you to say yes. We used to always count on you to just lighten up the room. And one of the things that the Enneagram teaches us about curiosity and transformation is when we see people show up in ways that are different than how we are used to them showing up, if we can stop for a moment and be curious about that and not try to drag them right back into the kind of archetypes and boxes that we have become accustomed to them showing up in, now we've set the table for them to keep growing. And it's messy when we grow. When I show up in a different way than I used to, usually the first day it doesn't show up great. It's like I'm trying to figure it out.
Very awkward.
The people around me are like, okay, let's try that again. And I'm like, I'm trying to create a boundary. Well, that was a mean boundary, Hunter.
You're like, I said no a little too loud.
Yes.
Yeah. And so if we can just be curious and let people show up in different ways, that's a gift and a grace we can give to people. And the Enneagram is one of those tools that helps us just set the table for that.
That's so beautifully said.
I know. I love that reminder. Well, can we shift and talk a little bit about your book?
Yes.
Hunter, we're so excited about it. If you're watching on YouTube, we have it right here. Letting Go, Finding You, Uncover Your Truest Self Through the Enneagram and Contemplation. And I love that you have the and.
Yes.
But it's both things. So you are really well versed, as Jill said earlier, in the passions and virtues.
Yes.
And would you, first of all, give folks listening a crash course on that? And then secondly, you write that many of us focus on overcoming the passion of our Enneagram type, but that the virtues reveal who we truly are. So in the context of parenting, this is a lot packed into one question.
Yeah, I love this.
In the context of parenting, how might a parent help their child and themselves lean into the virtue of their type instead of just trying to tame the reactive passion?
Yeah.
So what would that look like in real everyday moments with
I
kids?
love that, Sissy. Thank you. The first starting place to say is when we all learn our Enneagram number, most of the time what we learn first is our passion. So people are familiar with their passions. Ultimately, they are the 7 deadly sins plus 2. So they're words we're kind of familiar with. For 1's, it's anger, and 2's, it's pride, and 3's, it's deceit. 4's envy, 5's greed, 6's fear, 7's gluttony, 8's lust, and 9's sloth. And so each of those words is sort of unpacks to be something very specific that kind of builds a foundation point for the personality. And we can so I'm a 2, and so pride is mine, which I don't love. And I thought, well, pride. But pride for me as a 2 is really about, I've got this sense that, didn't God put me in this world to save and fix everybody? If y'all would just sort of let me do that. And there's this kind of pride of place and pride of position that 2s have to struggle with. The challenge is we learn our passion first when we learn our number, because that's just one of the foundation points and one of the building blocks for the whole personality that develops. But passion is not the first part of the story. The passions and the virtues historically in Enneagram wisdom were a linked discipline. Now we kind of have bifurcated them, and we stopped talking about 30 years ago. We stopped talking about the virtues and we just talked about the passions. And that makes sense because we know ourselves more by what we get wrong than by what we get right.
Yes.
So if I'm trying to tell you about who I am and how I show up in the world, my best language that I have is kind of usually to tell you how I sort of show up in ways that are kind of funny or clunky or get me into a little bit of trouble. But historically, the virtues came first. Now, if you look at the virtue and the passion for each Enneagram number, they are just opposites. So like I'm a 2, so pride was my passion. Well, I don't even have to tell you what my virtue is for you to maybe be able to get to a place of no, well, it's humility, pride and humility. All the virtues and passions are opposites. If you look at all the numbers, so for 1s, it's anger and serenity. For 2s, it's pride and humility. For 3s, it's truth and deceit. You know, so we could go through all the words and see the ways in which they're all different. They're all the opposites. So when you say, okay, now what does that tell us that they're opposites? Well, what it tells us is the virtue, which is actually connected with the true self, the soul, the Christ in you, the Christ in me, the deeper, truer thing. The virtue is an articulation of who you really are. But see, who you really are is so precious and vulnerable that we learn early on to protect it a little bit. We learn to hide it away. We learn that if I just wear my virtue on my sleeve, the world will kind of beat me up a little bit. And so we learn as children to hide what's truest about ourselves with a projection of its opposite. You know, and that's how we show up early. You know, if I want you to think I'm really, really brave and strong, you know, but really I'm scared, you know, I'm going to show up in the room maybe really brave, but really it's projecting maybe the opposite of what's going on inside of me. Well, we do that with our personalities, with our passions and virtues. So we start so early protecting our true precious virtue with its opposite that we actually forget that there's anything there but passion. You know, we actually forget about the virtue ourselves. And so all of this work that I'm doing in reconnecting the passions and virtues is to actually say, you know what the good news of the Enneagram is? The parts of your personality, your number, your passion that you don't like about yourself, you know what? They're actually the opposite of what's truest about yourself. And what I want to invite people to is rediscovery. And that word's important. It's not going and finding something new that's outside of yourself. It's actually re-engaging with what was always truest about yourself. And those are the virtues. And the reason why, Sissy, in the book, I connect these disciplines of the Enneagram and contemplative spirituality is simply because when I first discovered that, I thought, okay, well, what are the 5 steps? What are the 3 books I can read? What conference can I go to sort of find my way back toward virtue from a place of passion where really I'd kind of been living out of for most of my life? And the answer, though, is if this virtue is already inside of you and it has just been sort of covered and forgotten about through life, then we need a paradigm or a tool that's going to take us deeper inside of ourselves rather than something that's going to take us outside of ourselves. And so there's a way, Sue Monk Kidd, who's a great author that I love, she says, contemplation is about finding God in the soul. And so contemplation is simply about just going deeper within. So that's why I introduced this whole idea of contemplative living or contemplative practice as a pathway to go deeper within. And if we go deeper within, that's when we have the potential to rediscover the thing that's most true about us, which is the virtue. And so to just bring it all back to parenting for a minute, I think the thing for us to first just know in this discipline of the passions and virtues is me as a person, I'm an uncle, as a caregiver, as a friend. I am at my core the opposite of how my personality shows up in the world. And so I've got some opportunities to discover some new things about myself. And as a parent or a caregiver, I can look at my child or my niece or
Mhm.
the neighbor next door, I can look at this child and know many of the things that I am seeing projected in their personality, which we see all sorts of things. We may not know a child's Enneagram number, but we know things about their
Mhm.
personality, their way that they show up in the world. Many of these things may actually be projections of the opposite of what's truest about this child. And so, can I just kind of be curious about that? And now that's a lifetime of work, right? I
Yes.
mean, that's not something that we get to in 10 minutes and
Right.
figure out what do we do with all that.
Right.
But it's an invitation to say, the way that I show up in the world and people know me through my personality, through my Enneagram number, the way that the children in my life, they show up in their worlds and in my world through their personality or their way of seeing. What if there's something behind that in many ways is the opposite? And that thing behind it, the virtue, can I be curious about that and sort of kick the tires on that a little bit?
I love that.
So good.
I
It's
know.
really good.
And encouraging that I can get to
Well,
serenity.
hopeful,
What
it
in the
is.
world?
I know,
Honestly,
right?
I kind of, because I
Yes.
come from a Christian background and evangelical specifically, I talk about the good news, the
Yes.
gospel of the Enneagram. I kind of
Yes.
sometimes play with those words, but the good news is, what if you are actually the opposite of what your Enneagram number shows up as? Well, that changes the whole deal. And that changes the whole almost sort of complaint that I have and that we all have sometimes of, the Enneagram, it's just going to kind of put me in this box. It's just sort of going to get me obsessed with personality, or it's just a way of typing myself. Well, no, what if it's a way of uncovering that the truer things about you are the opposite of what you know about yourself?
Yeah. It's so hopeful.
What's a sixth virtue?
Faith.
Faith.
You know what's
Aw.
interesting is even downstairs I ran into a friend and he said, "Oh, you're an Enneagram. What number are you?" And I said 6. And I went, fear. And I could even feel it, like myself wanting to identify by the passion. But the truth is, the people in my life will tell me, "Oh, you're a person of great faith and courage."
Mm.
And so it is really funny as you're talking to it's been, I love
Yeah.
Hunter's book, by the way. I love it. I
Me
told
too.
him a million times that I loved it. But it is really beautiful to see yourself really more as God sees you, as God, that redeemed version.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
Well, and Jill, it's been so fun to know Jill as a friend and we've been able to see each other through kind of a lot of evolutions of each of our lives, of just job changes and career changes and emotional development changes. And it's like, when I think of who I know Jill to be, I think first of courage and faith.
Yes.
And that's because I have met you in a season of life where you've been committed to growth of your soul and inner work. And so we've been able to see the virtue shine through. Now, when we describe ourselves, we might say, well, fear.
Yeah,
Like you said,
yeah.
you're a 6.
Yeah.
Pride. For me, I'm a 2.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful when you see the virtue start to emerge.
Yes.
And we see it in each other.
Yes.
We see it in each other before we see it in ourselves.
Yes.
Always.
True.
That's a
It's
great
true.
statement.
Because the moment that we see it in ourselves, it's like in the Old Testament, some great thing happens. Well, let's build a monument to this. Let's camp here. Let's park here. And that's never the answer, right? The moment that I kind of see, whoa, humility kind of showed up today, it's like, all right, well, that means it's over. And we start the work again.
Yes, that's so good.
That's great.
And now we're going to take a little break to hear from one of our sponsors who makes this podcast possible. David, I have to tell you, my Blue Salt Always Pan 2.0 from Our Place has basically become the main character of my kitchen. I've been using it nonstop. Breakfast scrambles, fajitas for my nephews, cobblers in the cold weather. It does everything.
I know the feeling. Mine's the Sage Green Always Pan, and I use it every day. It's replaced half the cookware in my cabinets, which according to Connie, is a miracle.
The best part, it's actually good for you. Most nonstick pans still have forever chemicals that can leach into your food, but Our Place cookware is toxin-free, no PFAS, no Teflon, just great food and peace of mind.
And I love that it still performs like a dream. Eggs slide right out, even when I forget to use enough oil, which, if I'm honest, happens often.
And the 4-piece cookware set is genius. 2 always pans, 2 perfect pots in mini and full sizes. You can sear, saute, boil, bake, and save $150 when you bundle.
Plus, everything matches in these gorgeous colors. It's like your kitchen finally got its life together.
That's the truth.
Our Place is having their biggest sale of the year right now. Save up to 35% site-wide now through January 12th. Head to FromOurPlace.com/RBG to see why more than 1 million people have made the switch to Our Place kitchenware.
And with their 100-day risk-free trial, free shipping, and free returns, you can shop with total confidence. Shop the Our Place holiday sale right now. No code needed. And now back to our show.
Okay, Jill, you did a training with our staff on stances, and it was amazing. Years ago, we still talk about it as a staff.
I still think about it.
We
such
You're
a
such a
rich
special
time.
staff.
Well, it was a rich time with you.
Yes, it
And
was.
would you give a crash course on stances, A? And then part B, our mutual friend, Suzanne Stabile, all 4 of us, has said that we could likely identify a child's stance before we would know their number. And would you talk about what each stance might look like in kids?
I first learned about the stances when Hunter and I were training with Suzanne Stabile, and they kind of blew my mind. And in fact, I do probably more teaching of the stances now than I even do of the numbers, because when you're working with teams of people or corporations or whatever, that's how they tend to experience conflict in the workplace or synergy or whatever. So it operates under this presumption that as human beings, we have 3 centers of intelligence: thinking, feeling, and doing. We all do them. We think, we feel, and do. And 3 of the numbers in the Enneagram discount feeling. 3 of the numbers tend to discount or underuse thinking, and 3 tend to discount or underuse doing. So if it was like a layer cake, is what Suzanne teaches, we might have one that's real big and one that's sort of moderate layer, and then one that's kind of thin that we don't access as much, which keeps us sort of out of balance a little bit, because we're supposed to be using all 3 for different ways to be and engage in the world. So stances sort of teach us the one that we struggle with the most. So the second part of your question is like, how does that show up with kids, and how can we know that when we're engaging with people? And I experience this with clients too, whether I know their number or not, whether they're interested in the Enneagram, I can kind of sense a stance by sort of an avoidance of talking about feelings or a suspicion of sort of feelings language. You know, I know you guys talk a lot about feelings. You've got the cool feelings charts and taco charts. If you have a kid that's a 3, 7, or 8, this might be an overgeneralization, they might find that a little less interesting. You know, they might sniff at that or be a little suspicious of that or roll their eyes at that. You know, my youngest son is in the aggressive stance, and he has taught me that sitting at a table for a long time when people are just chatting about their life is sort of his worst nightmare.
Wow.
Because we're just talking about the feelings, and he wants to eat, and then he's always like, can we play a game while we're eating? And you know, and he's gotten like a lot better at it. But when I really asked what it was about, it's just all this sharing of stories and feelings and whatever. And that's it's inefficient to him.
Yes.
You know, it keeps him from moving to the next thing quickly. Also, the other thing about that stance is an orientation to time. So not to bog you guys in too much details, but we all prefer sort of past, present, future, sort of the way we orient how we see. So another way, you might have a kid that's always like, what are we doing next? Where are we going? What's on the horizon? You know, I remember my youngest who's in the stance from 3, 4 years old, he would wake up, what are we doing? Who are we seeing? Where are we going? What's the next trip? What's the next thing? So they might have a bent towards the future and a bent towards sort of tamping down the emotional, tender parts of their experience.
Those 3 numbers.
3s, 7s, and 8s.
And they're in which stance?
Oh, thank you for saying that. They are called the aggressive stance.
Okay.
Sometimes people like to say assertive stance, but people in the aggressive stance, they usually do not mind saying
they don't
aggressive
mind the word
stance.
aggressive.
They do not.
I
I
feel
don't like
bad.
my word when you
I
get to
feel-
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel bad for them. And I was like, do you want to say assertive? They're like, no, we are fine with that.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean they're aggressive against people.
Yeah.
It means they just know what they want to do. They're going to do it. If you want to come with them, great. If you don't, fine. So that's really different than the dependent stance, which we're moving to next, which everyone in this room is in.
I
was
by the
thinking
way.
that
All of
too.
us.
We're
Yes.
all in the dependent stance. That is
Yes.
1s, 2s, and 6s. And they will fight me on this every day, but they repress thinking.
Mm.
So it does not mean we are not thinking. We are thinking all the time. We are just not using it in productive ways.
Mhm.
1s sort of use it with sort of this worst case. 6s use it in worst case scenario thinking. They tend to spin on that. 1s might do more critical sorts of thinking about themselves, particularly about themselves. And 2s are fixated on relationships and how they're getting along with people and where they are within their relationships. So we're just not using it for the best of what thinking has to offer.
Mm.
So you might find kids that sort of verbally process a lot, though you don't have to be in the stance to do that. You might find them interrupting themselves a lot. You might find them a little unsure. They tend to see themselves as sort of limited and lacking, even though other people might see them as very competent and confident. These are kids who want to respond. They might want to be in all the activities. I was always like running for student office, although you don't have to be a 1, 2, and 6 to do that by any stretch. But I want to know what my teachers expected of me. I wanted to
Yes.
exceed that expectation. So a lot of personal pressure on themselves and also a sense of kind of being other referenced. So struggling a little
That's a
more with
great
what do
word.
my buddies think of me? What of
Uh-huh.
where am I with this person? That sort of thing. Does that sort of make sense? That one,
Yes.
did I get
Oh,
that?
What's the
beautiful.
Anybody want to
So
orientation of
good.
time?
Oh, and the orientation of time, thank you, is the present.
The present.
So I
Okay.
can even feel that in my body. Like sometimes I'm sitting during the day and I have a break and I'm like, okay, what's tonight? What's happening for dinner? Who are we seeing? I'm very much running through an order of kind of like the day and what's happening in sort of immediate time. And so I need my people in my life to go, hey, what are your dreams and goals? Or, hey, let's think about what happened in the past. So that's a
Great.
gift too, is understanding your kids' sort of orientation of time and being able to really pull them out of that. And then we have wonderful 4s, 5s, and 9s who are in the withdrawing stance. So these are kids who are ponderers. They don't move maybe as quickly as some of the other kids. They are, the people I know in the withdrawing stance, some of my best friends are in this stance. They don't like to think on the fly as much. They like to think about things and come back to you later. They are people who are doing repressed. So some of your work as a parent might be to pull them into that doing. They might want to sit around and think and feel, or feel and think. And some of their healing is in doing. So there's so much more I could say about all of these. They're in the past orientation to time. So these might be kids that come in to see you guys, or my clients that come in, and they will ponder the past pretty often. And they might even get stuck there. So we have to bring them into the present, the future. So I think the orientation to time can really help parents know the stances as well.
So helpful. I have never connected all of those things. I kind of saw them as separate pieces of the Enneagram. So thank you.
You're so
That's
welcome.
Super helpful.
It's funny, Suzanne uses language that it paints with a broad brush, but it helps me sometimes when I think about, you mentioned that sometimes it's the first thing we can see show up in somebody more than their number. We can sometimes see the stance.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think about that, again, at 50,000 foot views, so it doesn't capture everybody perfectly. But you can think about the aggressive stance, 3s and 7s and 8s, as people who sort of move against. And you can think about the dependent stance, 1s and 2s and 6s, as people who move toward. And then you can think about the withdrawing stance, 4s and 5s and 9s, as people who move away. And sometimes those words, that's what I think sometimes we do see in other people that we may not know really well, but sometimes after observing them for a longer period of time, we can start to see their bent toward kind of moving against or moving
Yep.
toward or
Yep.
moving away.
Well said.
So good.
Yes. Well, Hunter, we're going to go back to your book for a second. So a lot of parents wrestle with wanting to control outcomes for their kids.
Yes.
And in your book, you talk about freedom that comes with surrender.
Mm.
What wisdom does the Enneagram offer parents who struggle most with being clampy?
Right?
Man, that's a great.
I feel
I
for y'all
struggle
out
with it
there.
too.
I feel for
I
you.
love
parents.
it. I love it. That's a good word. I'm going to add that to my vocabulary.
I know, I love
You
it.
can.
You know, surrender is so hard. We all, every Enneagram number, every number likes to control, particularly ourselves. And then if we can, the people around us. I mean, that is every number. That is not just dependent. That's
Yep.
not just, I mean, we all sort of would like to control our outcomes, control our environment, control maybe even the people around us that we do life with. And so for all of us, all of our work, every one of the 9 numbers is really about letting go of control. Control is an illusion. We don't even control ourselves
That's
well.
right.
I mean, if all we worked on was controlling ourselves, we do it a little bit better maybe every day, but still not even that great. And so let alone trying to control other people around us. And so there is this posture of surrender, Sissy, that I describe in the book is really connected to that contemplative posture. And what I mean by that is if we come to the Enneagram and we think of it as a tool to better control ourselves, you know what we're actually going to do is just grow our personality, grow our number, grow our false self, grow our passion. If we think of our personality as something that instead of controlling, we can actually let go of a little bit and open up and surrender a little bit, well, now we have the potential for something else to emerge. You know, if I just let go of my personality, I'm opening my hands just ever so gradually. I'm not throwing my personality away. I'm not throwing it away or trying to escape it is really control. If I just open up and let go, hold loosely, now I have the potential for what was always there to kind of shine through a little bit more. That's really the virtue. And so this posture of control versus surrender, you know, Father Richard Rohr says we bring 2 approaches to life. To everything we do, we either bring the approach of willfulness or willingness.
Wow.
And whenever we bring the approach of willfulness, hey, we do some good stuff. We get some things done. We can, make some big changes. We can check off all the things of our to-do list, and everything contains its opposite. So that's wonderful. But what I would say is transformation and soul growth and inner work does not ever come from willfulness. Transformation
big
and
thing.
soul
I feel
growth.
like that's all where we live as ones is all willfulness.
Those deep things only come from a posture of willingness.
Yes.
And I'll just say one more thing about that because we're talking kind of about ones.
Yeah.
And I just mentioned Father Richard Rohr. Here, Father Richard Rohr, and some of your listeners may be familiar with him, some won't, but he is a Catholic priest in New Mexico that's a popular Christian author and speaker and teacher. And what is so interesting about him is he's one of the best living embodiments of what I'm describing about personality, about passion and virtue. And let me just quickly say why. Father Richard Rohr is a 1. He's a self-described 1 on the Enneagram. So when we think about the passion and the personality and the number of 1s, and you all can teach us a lot about that, 1s are a number that is trying to perfect things and seeing things sometimes in a dualistic way, kind of I like it, I don't like it. It's right, it's wrong. It's good, it's bad. I could do this better, or it's good enough. Almost a sorting mind is how I would sometimes describe oneness. Well, if anybody ever looks into the body of work that Father Rohr has created for us, you will see that everything he writes, everything he talks about, everything he teaches really boils down to one theme. And that theme is, if everything doesn't belong, nothing belongs. And if everybody doesn't belong, nobody belongs. His whole life is about teaching non-dualism, both and, not either or. Well, but as a one, he's supposed to be an either or person. His personality tells us everything about what he's doing and teaching should be either or. It should be dualism. But when we see his body of work as embodying non-dualism, that's our glimpse to say, look, at the core, ones are the opposite of how they've come to know themselves. So actually, a one is the person who can teach us the most about non-dualism.
Wow.
Which, that's hopeful.
It
and
is.
that's
So
exciting.
It
It's
is.
hopeful for us, for sure.
Okay, Jill,
Mhm.
you are not only, as we're discussing, one of our favorite Enneagram teachers, you are an incredibly gifted singer-songwriter, recording artist.
Amen.
And as if that weren't
Yes.
enough, a brilliant therapist, one of our
Yes.
favorite.
All of the above.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
so
All
kind.
of the above.
Actually, can we pause and say, I mean, I love so much of your music. Abide With Me, your version of Abide With Me, I could listen to 4 times a day, and
Thank you
I
so
would feel
much.
so much more serenity
Yeah.
inside of myself.
Thank you.
Great
So,
reminder.
Make sure and listen to that,
Yeah.
everybody
Thank
who's
you
listening.
so much.
Yes, and you're my favorite referral
Thank
Yes.
you,
as a
Sissy.
therapist.
That
Me
means
too.
the world
Seriously,
to me.
everyone I send, I say, and I would go see her if I wasn't her friend.
It goes
Yes.
both ways.
I mean,
it goes both
oh.
ways.
It's ridiculous how
It's
talented you are in
ridiculous.
so many
Agreed.
places, friend.
And kind and gracious
Mhm.
and lovely.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Yes.
All the things.
Yes, all
All
the
the
things.
things.
Thank you.
In thinking about your work as a therapist, where would you say you have seen parents best use this tool of the
Yes.
Enneagram?
Well, so much of it has been said already well by Hunter, but I think it is when they meet their child with compassion and curiosity and are less fixated on their behavior.
Yes.
I'm not saying we don't care about behavior. Please hear me. I'm not one of these parents that's like, your behavior doesn't matter. Of course it does. And this understanding, like, let's say a dad who is an 8, who has a son that is a 4. Like, he might project his experience and way of being in the world onto his son without compassion and curiosity. So I think that is the best thing parents can do is just know, hey, what worked for me might not work for them. I was thinking of a story of this the other day with my daughter, who is a 4, and she's my middle child, and I was trying to love her in ways that I wanted to be loved. And I was parenting her out of my passions and virtues, and they just weren't hers. And this is a silly example, but I hope people will feel this. She was in the bathtub. She was a little girl. She was super excited about her birthday party coming up. And I'm thinking that I'm loving her by asking her all these questions because I'm a 6 and I ask a lot of questions and I want people to feel known and seen and heard. And I'm just like, what kind of cake do you want? And who do you want to be there? And da da. And finally she just goes, oh, Mom, you're like stressing me out. She's like, I just want it to be beautiful and I want to wear pink and I want a cake and I want my friends there. And I was
Wow.
like, thank you.
Mm.
Thank you for telling me that. Because
Yeah.
here I am thinking, I'm loving her well by like, I love asking questions and she's finding that like kind of stressful. And same thing the other day. She's a senior in college. Same kind of conversation. I'm thinking I'm loving her by not changing her room. And there's some things that haven't been in, and I want her to feel safe because safety is so important to me. I want her to come home and know her room is there, and we want her home and we love her. And she said to me the other day, Mom, just change some things. It kind of stresses me out to think about coming and doing all that. That's sort of overwhelming to me. I would love to come home and some of those One Direction posters are gone. And so those are small, silly things. But if I'm trying to love her the way that I want to be loved, I'm missing how she her way of being in the world and how she wants to be
Mm.
loved and cared for.
Mm.
So I just think meeting our kids with compassion and curiosity and understanding that their motivations are different than ours. The way they see a particular situation is different than ours. It keeps you humble, and it keeps you in the second commandment, loving your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
Good.
And learning to see the
Beautiful.
world with that curiosity can be such a growth point for
Yes.
us, and of humility. I mean, all of it. Put back
Yes.
together. Well, so moving back to some of the contemplative ideas, you explain that beautifully and in a way that's so good and challenging. And it is hard to bring the contemplative world to the practical world.
Yeah.
But are there some ways you could do that for parents
Yes.
who want to know more about what does that mean for me as a parent in my daily life today?
Absolutely. It's hard because as a parent, as a person in that phase of life, you're trying to make it through the days.
Right.
You are busy.
Yes.
And there is a lot to do, and just keeping up with the schedule and the to-do list probably feels like the day is full. And so it can feel overwhelming to think, oh my gosh, I mean, how in the world am I supposed to connect with this word of contemplation? I can't go stay at Abbey of Gethsemane for a week for a silent retreat.
Right.
My house is crazy. I'm not able to actually get 20 minutes of silence maybe. What I'm really interested in for myself, because it's helped me and for all of us, is redefining the idea of what it means to be a contemplative. I talked a few moments ago about Sue Monk Kidd kind of saying that contemplation is about finding God in the soul. So let me contrast that with, she says, I grew up in an evangelical kind of background. I grew up here in Nashville in the Baptist church and had a great experience and learned a lot. And she says evangelicalism, its focus is about finding God in the Word, right? Finding God in the Bible. I did Bible drill. I learned a lot of verses.
Me too.
We learn all those things. And so a lot of the focus of that kind of posture of my life was about discovering God in the Bible, in the written word, and teaching and all that. If contemplation is about finding God in the soul, then contemplation is going to require us to adopt some practices and postures that help us go inward rather than outward. And again, I'm a non-dual, I'm a both and person. So I think there's a lot for us to discover everywhere. So there's a lot for us to discover in the Word or out in the outer world outside of ourselves. But most of the time, our inner life can be underdeveloped because it's just harder. It's more mysterious. I mean, I can go read a book or read a passage and I can kind of feel accomplished or maybe productive in that. But what does it actually look like for me to meditate for 5 minutes, for me to take a walk reflectively? So contemplative practices can be anything with attention and intention. So what I describe in the book is all we have to do is bring attention and intention to anything that we're doing, and we can transform it into a contemplative practice. So here's what I mean. A lot of us, grew up maybe thinking about Brother Lawrence and practicing the presence of God. And we kind of are familiar with this image of he's washing dishes in a monastery, and he has this role that seems like, well, that's not any big thing, but actually it turns into this place of grace and place of ministry and outpouring. And so let's look at what he's doing. He is washing dishes with attention. He is doing what he's doing. He's not thinking about what's coming next. He's not what would actually be more interesting is if I got a speaking gig, if I could write a big book or I got to go talk to everybody from the stage. He is washing dishes. He is doing what he is doing. Attention, with all his attention, bringing all his attention to what he's doing, and he's doing what he is doing with an intention that is simply this: to be totally open to the presence and activity of God without controlling it, without having a an outcome or an expectation.
Mm.
So I can be a contemplative every moment of every day with attention and intention. So when I go work a jigsaw puzzle at home, I can take that 10 minutes. And if I am saying, you know what, I'm going to fully attend to this thing that I am doing right now. And I'm actually, even though maybe it feels silly, I'm going to say, you know what, as I put these pieces of this puzzle together, I'm going to just adopt a posture of being totally open to the presence and activity of God. You know, what may God do in me through this?
Mm.
And so as parents, driving our children to school, taking a walk with our child around the block, washing the dishes at the end of the day, we can transform these very ordinary acts with attention and intention into contemplative acts. And when we do that, we won't see this great outcome. You know, we won't know really what's it doing in me? We'll see now we're back to control when we ask that question. Now I'm back to willfulness when I need, what did washing these dishes produce? You know, did it transform me? Did I get an epiphany while I was sitting here? Did I get the answer in my head to the question that I've been asking all these years? No. Let go of the results.
Yeah.
Let go of the expectations. Do what you're doing with attention. And while you're doing it, adopt a posture of openness to God. And over time, you will see transformation occur in your life. That contemplation is as simple as that. You don't have to be a monk or a nun and go live in a monastery and take a vow of silence and, spend 5 hours every day in a Zen place, a quiet room, No, that's not what contemplation is. It's about bringing attention and intention to everything that you're doing. And if you will adopt that posture, you will see growth of your soul and transformation. And it will be slow. And it will not be diagnosable, because has it produced any results yet? Where am I further down the path today than I was? As soon as I start asking those questions and needing those types of outcomes, I have adopted the opposite of a contemplative posture. I've now adopted kind of a controlling, active posture. Contemplation is about letting go, opening up, surrendering. Anything you do in your life as a parent, as a human, that involves a posture of opening up, letting go, and surrendering, you are a contemplative. You are experiencing contemplation, and you have positioned yourself in such a way to where your soul can expand and grow and you can transform. But it's outside of your control. It's our friend, we've talked a lot about our friend Suzanne Stabile today, and she tells a funny story about doing spiritual direction where she goes to her spiritual director and she says, I just wish I knew what God was up to. And her spiritual director said, well, Suzanne, that's none of your business. Well, no, let me reframe. I don't mean what God is like up to in the world or in the city. I just mean, I wish I knew what God was up to in my life. And he said, right, Suzanne, that's none of your business. Well, that's hard for us.
Yes, it is.
It takes a lifetime of unlearning in a way. But that is the contemplative posture. It's as simple as that. It's about letting go, opening it up, surrendering. That's the work.
And that it can be in the most mundane moments that become holy.
I can take a walk this afternoon in a contemplative posture. I can wash the dishes today I can drive. I can turn off the radio and drive to the next place that I'm going after this. And I can embrace some silence. And I can let go of my list making and my control making and my rehearsing. Well, did I say the right thing? Did I not say the right thing? I can let go of all that. And that can be a contemplative moment.
Yeah. I walk every day and listen to Pray As You Go. Are y'all familiar with that app? Which feels so much like it's inviting me into that space. So I would sure recommend that app.
Yes.
And it also made me think about, have either of y'all read the Quotidian Mysteries?
Is that Laundry, Liturgy, and Women's Work by
Yes.
Kathleen Norris?
Yes.
I have not.
Oh, it's
I need
so
to.
good.
I was thinking of that
yes,
too.
you were. Yeah, it feels so much like that as you're talking. So we can link to those things in the show notes.
And isn't that wonderful?
Thank
Because
you.
then it's for anybody.
It's
Yes,
for anybody.
For anybody,
absolutely.
anytime, anywhere,
matter
and
what
whatever
your
the
life looks like.
particularities and the context are of your life, including
Yes.
all your limitations.
Yes. Yes.
You know what else, Hunter, I was thinking as you were sharing so wisely, how all of these things are connected to, in some way, slowing down in a world that is obsessed with hustle and optimization and all the things. And
Great reminder.
how little happens in those ways, how much happens in the ways you're describing too, of the good stuff. And so I love what you're inviting us into.
I have the opportunity to teach this contemplative kind of cohort each year in Dallas, and we take 40 people through kind of just a year of living contemplatively. And this year, it's amazing. I'm like having all the feels. We've got a nun in there with us. I mean, I'm like, and I'm like, okay, I need to, I'm just trying to learn from her. And so her name is Janet. She's one of my favorite humans in the world. And so we get together a couple of weeks ago, and we had taken the summer off. And so I go up to Janet and I say, Janet, what did you do this summer? And she said, well, Hunter, based on your teaching this year, honestly, I'm not sure what I did. I'm just trying to be. I tried to be this summer. And I thought, oh, Lord, I thought that's what I needed.
That's
that's
good.
the posture. But you're right, Dave. Our world, we are swimming in waters of what did you do? And what did you accomplish?
Yes.
We are
I know.
swimming in those
And
waters.
parents are feeling so much pressure.
So
Yes,
much
they
pressure.
are.
And kids are feeling pressure.
Yes.
It's
too
a
much.
lot.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Even thinking about inviting your kids to just be.
Just
Yeah.
be.
What does that look like? Even if you're saying on just this Saturday, we're all just going to be together and we're going to figure that out. Let's brainstorm.
Yeah.
It would be such a fun activity.
We can learn to practice it. And we kind of have to, all the spiritual practices, all these things are a practice.
Right.
And learning to be is something we can practice.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my clients a lot. I love Lisa D'Amour. I know you guys love her work, but her book, Under Pressure, about girls and anxiety, she has this phrase where she says, parents don't make time for slack in the system. And slack in the system is the thing that we know is tied to lower anxiety in kids. And so even when you're choosing things like schools and all these different things, are you considering family sanity? So I'll talk about that a lot. And it's similar to what you're saying,
So
just
good, Jill.
having slack in the system does allow us these little moments. And I'm feeling for the parents out there that are at all the games and all the things. But I have felt the presence of God at soccer games. I mean, I really have. There's times I would just look around and be like, I'd have like a Thomas Merton experience. I'm like, look at all these kids shining like the sun. They're walking around and their parents are just amazing and beautiful. And look at all these people from all walks of life. Like you can be contemplative, for a second.
That's beautiful.
Even at the soccer field.
And we have to remember that we can't get anywhere if we think, okay, I got to change my whole life. Like my life isn't working.
That's
I can't be contemplative because I've got to be at soccer tonight. You start with the life you have.
That's right.
And figuring out how to just transform your own way of showing up in the life that you have in a contemplative way. It's not about changing your
What you're doing.
to-do list.
Yeah.
That may be some fruit
So it
that
can
comes
be,
later,
yeah.
as we learn to be, maybe more than learning to do. But you start with the life you have.
That's right. That's right.
You too, I don't want this conversation to end.
Me either.
We'd like to trap the two of you in this room for about 4 more hours.
Seriously.
But we won't. But we've got one last question we'd love to ask you. So you both say the Enneagram is less about putting us in boxes and more about showing us a path toward healing. So for parents listening who might feel stuck or discouraged, how could this tool give them hope not only for themselves, but for their kids too? What's one last thing you all would offer in that space?
The way that you have come to know yourself, it may just be the opposite of what's really there. And so the things that are frustrating you right now about yourself and maybe even about your kids, where you feel like I have worked on myself and I have tried to fix myself and I'm having the same problems that I had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. When we get to that place, which I get to daily, just let the Enneagram and this discussion of passions and virtues and all the things we've talked about plant a seed that it could be that there is a whole nother story about yourself to discover that may just be the opposite of all the things that you have come to believe about who you are and how you show up and what kind of problems you have. It may just be the opposite.
I love that, Hunter. And I was thinking of this song I wrote called Love is a Long Game. And when I'm thinking about my own story with my kids and when I'm sitting with clients in their journey with their kids, because spiritual transformation and transformation of any kind is slow work, I hope that really encourages parents that this is not the end of the story. This is a chapter. This is a season. And God wants good things for their children. And so whatever season you find yourself in that's discouraging or whatever, I really hope, like Hunter was saying about giving you a vision of the opposite, your story is not over yet with your child. Your story is not over yet with your child. This isn't the end of their story. There are good, beautiful things for them to come.
David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible. Chris Starrett, our engineer.
Our management team at KCH.
And we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.